Okay, 10.5 is what I was alluding to, that we would start doing it a little bit backwards. So what we're going to do is we're going to be given the quadratic expression first, and then we're going to try to factor it. So to factor a quadratic expression means to write it as a product of two linear expressions, like the two linear expressions or three linear expressions we were using in the last lesson. So the way we go about this is we're going to start with the quadratic equation x squared plus 3x plus 2. And for this trinomial, we have b equals 3 and c equals 2. So you need to find two numbers whose sum is 3 and whose product is 2. I recommend starting with the product first. And you know that the products of 2 are only going to be 1 and 2 for you to have two numbers. So will those two products work for the sum of 3? Now, you also have to pay attention to the operational symbols or the integer symbols. So this time we have both positive, so it makes it a little bit easier. So I could say that one of my factors could be using my 2, so x plus 2, and then I could also do the x plus 1. 2 times 1 for my last to give me the positive 2 here. And then the 2x, we'll do outside first, the 1x from the outside, and the 2x, if I put those together, that will give me my 3x. I'm adding, those are the sums, and I am multiplying for the last step. I need to have the product be a positive. I can get the product of a positive by multiplying two positives or by multiplying two negatives. I need to get the sum to be a negative, so I can get that by two negatives or two positives. So again, I'll start with what I was doing before. Let's get the factors here that we could use to get to 6. Okay, that part was on the right track, and then I jumped ahead. Okay, so now I need to figure out how am I going to get my, the harder part is to find that middle one. So how am I going to get the result of a sum of negative 5? So if I added the negative, I need to get a positive at the end, so I need to have, sorry, I kind of jumped around there. To get a positive at the end, I have to have the same operational symbols. I cannot get a negative in the middle if I'm not using the negative symbols. So the negatives have to be to give me, the same symbol has to be in each parentheses to give me my positive at the end, but I cannot get a sum with a positive 6 and a negative 1, and then still get the product of a positive 6 at the end. So I'm going to have to use my 2 and my 3. That way, if I multiply it out, I'm going to get my x squareds. I'm going to look at my last, they're the easier ones. I'm going to get positive 6. But my middle ones, my oi, change colors here for you. I'm going to have my outside and my inside. So I would have a negative 3x and a negative 2x. That would give me my negative 5x. So you're looking at the products first. How can you get the products? Think of the symbols that you could use. And then you're looking to see which symbols would result in the sum. So we had to use the negatives that time. All right, so this is the one I was starting to do instead. My eyes kind of roamed to the next one. And I forgot what one I was doing here, looking at my book and the screen at the same time. So this time I have two negatives. I need to have a product that's a negative, and I need to have a sum that is a negative. Again, I would start with my factors of 8. I have my 1 and my 8. You don't have to write these down. I'm writing them down so you're seeing where I'm getting them. You could be doing these mentally. And I have my factors of 2 and 4. Those are my only factors for 8. Now, knowing, again, if you go to your properties you had in 10.3, knowing the final equation has a negative and a negative, I know that I have to have one of them be a positive and one of them be a negative. So looking at my choices, if one of these is a positive and one was a negative, how could I get the sum? That's your tricky part. How could I get the sum of the -2? So the only ones that are going to help me with the sum of a -2 are 2 and 4. When I factor that out, I want to make sure that I'm going to have the larger number be the negative to result in a -2 in the center. So I know I can do an x plus and an x minus. Everybody sees that? I need to get an x squared. I need to get a product of a negative, so I need to have different integers, a positive and a negative. The next thing I'm looking at is I want to have my sum be a negative, so the larger has to be the negative and the smaller will be the positive. Okay, you hopefully can see the first and you can see the last are going to work out in our equation. Now we have to make sure that our outside and inside, so we have a -4x, positive 2x, that would result in our -2x. Now they're also showing that you the checks with the graphing calculator if you need to do that. And then finally, we have, I guess we have one more after this. The example for factoring when B is positive and C is negative. So when they're saying this in the book, they're saying your A squared plus, AX squared plus your BX plus your C. That's where they're getting your A's and your B's. Okay? So we have that the B is going to be a positive and the C is going to be a negative. Or the way I was referring to it is your product is going to be a negative and your sum is going to be a positive. So how do I get a negative product? I have to have a negative and a positive. So let's look at some products of 18. Those are my products of 18. I need my OI, my outside and inside, to be a positive 7x. So I know that my larger of the two factors needs to be positive to allow us to have a positive for the sum of my outside and my inside. Now, what factors, could I use that would both give me 18 when multiplied and give me 7 when added or subtracted? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do a positive and a negative. Again, I know I need to do that because of my negative term at the end. That's the product term. I want my sum to result in a positive 7. So I'm going to put my 9 as the positive and my 2 as the negative. That would be subtracting 2 from 9, which would give me 7. My positive 9 times my negative 2 gives me my -18. I'm going to pause this to continue at a later time.